ASMR Retro. I'm glad to be back. I took some time off and I missed you guys in the meantime, so I'm glad to be back and excited to make a new video for you today. So, without wasting any more time, let's get right into it. Today, I'm going to review a horror movie, much like I did with A Nightmare on Elm Street. Today, I'm going to review the very first Friday the 13th movie, and I'm not talking about the remake. This is the 1980 movie, so you're gonna see how it all began. So, so the like I said, it was released in 1980, and January 1st, 1980 to be exact. Oh no, that's in the United Kingdom. Anyways, it was 1980, and the budget was 700,000 US. The box office was 59.8 million, which is awesome for that budget. And it was directed by Sean Cunningham. Alright, let's get into the movie, or the comic of the movie. So yeah, like I did with the Nightmare on Elm Street, I made a little comic that helped me describe the movie to you. So I hope you enjoy it. Alright, let's get started. So we start off here, and it's Camp Crystal Lake, 1958. So that's where this story begins, sort of. Actually, it begins before that, but anyways, that's where the movie begins. And so Camp Crystal Lake is where most of the movies take place. And you can see a cabin here, the lake is here. There is a dock, just some random camp stuff, trees, whatever. The full moon is out, there's a canoe. And you can hear music coming from inside the cabin. So now we're inside the cabin, and you see there's a bunch of counselors, and they're singing songs, just having a good time. I guess this is like the counselor's lounge or something. And you can see there's two counselors in particular, a boy and a girl, and they're kind of staring at each other, kind of flirting, and you can see the hearts, and music. So then, they end up sneaking off from the rest of the counselors, and they are gonna go make some music of their own in the form of adult situations. So I think you know what I mean. So they go to this other cabin. It's kind of like a barn kind of looking thing. So that's them sneaking off into this other barn thingy. So they go in, and they go up the steps to this upper level, and then they start kissing, kiss, heart. And then, they start engaging in the adult situations. And then we have a point of view shot. There's a lot of point of view shots. And if you don't know what that is, that just means it's from somebody's point of view rather than a third person camera or whatever. And there's a lot of them in this movie because we're not supposed to know who the killer is until the end of the movie or near the end of the movie. So whenever the killer's in a scene, it's usually from their point of view, so you don't see them. So anyways, we have this point of view shot of someone entering the barn and slowly going up the steps. And the counselors notice this person, and they seem to know who it is. So the boy gets up, and he's like, he's pulling up his pants, and he's kind of embarrassed, and he's like, oh, we weren't doing anything, we were just messing around. Which is kind of a funny way to put it. Like, if you don't want somebody to know that you're doing adult stuff, you don't say you're messing around, you say, oh, we were just talking, or I don't know, I was just making sure your teeth were clean or something like that. I don't know. You don't say we're messing around, because that means, anyways, I won't get into it, but I think you know what I'm trying to say. So just as he says this, he's approaching the killer, and he gets stabbed in the stomach. And now you don't see it happen, but he just kind of reacts like he gets stabbed, and then his body flops on the ground, and you see a huge wound in his stomach with blood coming out of his mouth. Poor guy. So the girl screams, ah, tries to run. She tries to get around the killer, but she can't avoid the killer. So then we get the killer slowly approaches the girl, and the girl screams, and then we get sort of a fade to white shot. So clearly she bit the bucket too. She died too, but you don't really see it happen. And then we get the iconic title screen. So it's Friday, F R I D A Y the T H E 13th 1 3 T H, and it has that classic 3D effect, and it starts off really small and kind of like grows, and then it looks like it crashes through some glass. So I guess it's supposed to be breaking through the camera lens or something like that. So a pretty cool title sequence, and then you go through like 5 hours of credits on a black background, so that's kind of boring. Glad movies don't really do that anymore. Most of them. So now we flash to the present. So this is Friday, June 13th, the present. So apparently it takes place in 2020. No, I'm just assuming it takes place in 1980, but we don't know that for sure. So now we're in this small town in New Jersey, I guess. And it looks like a rundown ghost town. It's not a ghost town, but it looks like very rundown. Kind of creepy. And there's this bridge over here, and then we see this girl walking across the bridge with a huge backpack. So the girl's walking through this town for what seems like 25 hours, but she finally gets to this diner, and she enters the diner, and we're introduced to one of the characters, although I wouldn't get too attached to her, if you know what I mean. And I hope she doesn't get too attached to her throat either, but we'll get to that. So her name is Annie. It's Annie, Annie, and she's like a very upbeat, chipper girl, and like a little bit overly friendly, I guess. I don't know how to explain it, but she goes into this diner and she says, "Which way to Camp Crystal Lake?" So we find out that she's one of the counselors for this camp. So the camp was closed, I think, for a long time, and they're getting it ready to open for the summer. And she's going to help out, but she can't find her way there. So everyone in the diner just kind of turns and looks at her and doesn't say anything for a bit. And finally, this guy here, he's a bit reluctant at first, but he's like, "I can drive you part of the way." And she's like, "Okay, thanks." So they go outside, and they're walking to his truck, and they see another character. They never say this guy's name, I don't think, or maybe they do, but it's not important. But when they're outside walking to the truck, they see this guy, Ralph, R-A-L-P-H. And he's like this old man, he looks disheveled, and his clothes are all like wrinkly and stuff, and he's like, "You're going to Camp Blood, ain't ya? It's got a death curse. You're doomed. So he keeps saying that. She's doomed. It's got a death curse. Don't go there. Blah, blah, blah. Looks kind of crazy. And Annie's kind of creeped out. But the truck driver's just like, "Get out of here, Ralph." So he knows, obviously, who Ralph is, and knows that he's just a crazy old man. Doesn't really pay too much attention to him. Or does he? Maybe Ralph knows something. So that was the first page. The second page. So they walk, this is the guy's truck. So he gives Annie a lift in his truck. So I guess he works for this company, Elston Oil Supply. So they're driving, and the guy's kind of friendly at first, and he's like, "Oh, are all the girls at Camp Crystal Lake gonna be as pretty as you?" And Annie just kind of awkwardly said, "I don't know," which is kind of a cute, funny response. But and then they're just driving for a bit, and he's kind of staring at her, and he's like, "Did your boss tell you about what And she's like, no, what happened? I don't know anything about it. And he tells her that, a kid drowned there a long time ago, and then a year later there was 2 murders, so referring to the 2 counselors in the beginning who got killed. And then he said, every time they try to open the camp, something happens to prevent it. Like one time, the water went bad. And then he's like, oh, you're starting to sound like Ralph over there. And he's like, look, I'll give you some advice. Quit while you can. And she's like, I can't. And then he responds, oh, you dumb know-it-all kids, you think you know everything, blah, blah, blah. So he sounds kind of bitter. And then this is Annie sitting inside the truck, and she's like, you're an American original. Which I thought that line always made me cringe, because it just seemed so out of place. Like, who would say that in that moment? Like, what does that even mean? Was that a common catchphrase? Like, I don't know. I never really got that line there. It just seems so out of place. And something else I noticed, I always thought there was something off about Annie. I keep calling her Anne. Something off about Annie, and now I realize that she's the only character, or the only actor in the movie who's voiced over. All her lines are voiced over. I don't know why. It does look like it can be her voice, but again, I don't know. Who knows if it's her voice or not? I'm sure I can find out, but yeah, I'm not sure why she was voiced over in the movie. So, anyway, so she was dropped off, and I guess that's as far as the truck driver can go. And it just so happens she was dropped off. There was like a cemetery behind her. I guess supposed to be like a foreshadowing. But yeah, it wasn't a really realistic cemetery. Clearly, they built it for this movie, and it was literally like a fence, and there was like 2 rows of tombstones, and that's it. So clearly, it wasn't a complete cemetery. So she continues to walk, and she has her massive backpack, and the backpack is like the only thing in this movie that's bigger than her hair, because her hair is huge. Okay, so now we get introduced to some more characters. We cut to Camp Crystal Lake, and where we meet Steve Christie. I believe his last name is Christie, but I'm gonna call him Steve Flanders because he does remind me of Ned Flanders with the mustache and the glasses. And he's wearing jean shorts, no shirt, and a little red thing around his neck, maybe to absorb sweat, I guess, I don't know. And he's got a little poofy fro, and he has an axe. And with that outfit, it looks like he's wearing nothing at all. If you know what that's a reference from, let me know in the comments. But anyways, so he's trying to cut down this tree stump. I guess he's like getting the camp ready, because it's gonna open in 2 weeks. And then we have some counselors arrive. There's these 3 arrive together. This guy here is Jack, and he's played by a young Kevin Bacon. And so I call him Jack Bacon. Jack Bacon. And then his girlfriend, I hope you can see this, but his girlfriend Marcy, and his friend Ned is one of those cliche, annoying horror movie characters who's always, doing pranks and practical jokes, and I didn't like his character. Too annoying. And then we're also introduced to Alice, she's another counselor, but she was already at the camp. She arrived before the other 3. And so yeah, as soon as these guys show up, Steve asks them to help him push this trunk over, which is kind of weird. He didn't even introduce himself. He's just like, hey, help me remove this trunk. And they're like, oh, okay. But then after he introduces himself, and then he's like, alright, let's get to work. And then they're like, already? I thought we had 2 weeks. So clearly they thought they were going to have some R&R time. So then we get the next scene. We have Alice, and she's hammering something. She's on a ladder, and she's hammering something. Tap, 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 tap. And then, so then Steve shows up, Steve Flanders, and gives her a hand a little bit, and then he starts looking at her sketchbook because I guess Alice likes to draw, and he's like, "Wow, these are really good drawings." And then he's like, "And you're really pretty," which is kind of awkward. And then he sees a picture that Alice drew of him, and he's like, "When did you draw this?" And she said, "Last night." And he says, "Do I really look like that?" And she's like, "You did last night." So because of their banter and because she drew a picture of him last night, I always assumed that they were a couple. But then when I watched it this time, I'm like when I watched it to make this comic, I'm like, wait a minute, I don't think they were actually a couple. It was just, Steve was just kind of creeping on her, as you'll see in a second. So Steve is like, okay, this camping thing isn't really for you, is it? So Alice is not really into this whole camping thing, and she wants to leave. And he's like, come on, give it one more week. And then if you still don't like it after a week, you can go home. She's like, okay, fine, I'll give it one more week. And then Steve kind of like touches the side of her head and like caresses her hair a little bit. And Alice was clearly uncomfortable with that, so kind of a creepy moment. But I think they kind of introduced that because, like I said, you don't know who the killer is. And I think they wanted us to assume that it could be Steve. So they're trying to make him look creepy. And maybe they were, with that old guy, Ralph, the old crazy guy, I think they wanted you to think that it could possibly be him as well. But maybe it is, we'll see. So then sometime after this, by the way, Steve has to leave the camp for a while. He's going to town to run some errands, and he'll be back later. So it's just the counselors at the camp at this moment. So then we meet another character, Bill, Bill. And Alice goes up to him and asks him, like he's painting this fence here or something, and she asks him if he needs more paint or whatever. And he says, did the other counselor show up? And Alice says, all except Annie. We don't know where she is yet or whatever. So Annie was the girl in the beginning. So, not in the beginning, but the girl who got the ride with the truck driver. And then we have this faraway shot of Alice talking to Bill, and it's another point of view shot. So obviously the killer is watching them, like they're hiding behind this tree, and there's bushes here, and they're just kind of watching them two talk. Another creepy idea. So then we're introduced to another character. Her name is Brenda, 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 and she's setting up the archery area. Where you target practice with bow and arrow. So she sets up this target thing here, and then suddenly an arrow goes flying into the target, and she turns around and she sees Ned, and she's like, "Are you crazy?" So like I said, Ned was the idiot who always does practical jokes and stuff like that. Now, anyway, I'll get to that in a second, but he's like, ta-da, like he did some awesome trick. And, Brenda's like upset, and he's like, you're beautiful when you're angry, sweetheart. And she just kind of laughs it off, and like in a playful way, she starts chasing him, like she's not really that mad. But if someone did anything like that to me, yeah, you would be the first murderer at Camp Crystal Lake, well, of the season, committed by me. I'm kidding. I don't approve of murder of any kind. But actually, a sad note is that I was doing some research on the movie before I made the comic, and I found out that the girl who plays Brenda died in real life. I think in mid 2006. I think she was in her 50s or something like that. I can't remember how she died, but kind of sad. But anyway, moving on. So now we now we cut to Annie, the girl from the truck. Now she's hitchhiking. She's still trying to make her way to Camp Crystal Lake, and a Jeep stops and picks her up, and is driving along the road. Now you never see the driver, so that's again the indication that whoever's driving is the killer. Spoiler alert, but it's the only way to explain this properly. So they're driving in the Jeep along the road, is just making small talk, explaining how she likes to work with kids and all that stuff. And then the Jeep kind of speeds up, and then they pass the road to Camp Crystal Lake. You could see the sign, and Anne's like, hey, wasn't that the road for Camp Crystal Lake back there? But the driver says nothing, just keeps driving, going faster. And she's like, I really think you should stop, please. But the driver doesn't stop or doesn't say anything, so Anne opens the door and just jumps out. And then she kind of like does a forward roll onto the dirt, which surprisingly, it was the real actress doing that stunt. And I was really surprised. I was like, wow, it's a pretty good stunt. Like, she must have some background training and that kind of thing, because and she just landed on the dirt. It wasn't like a mat or nothing like that, so that was actually pretty impressive. So then she jumps out and she starts running in the forest, and the killer starts chasing her. Again, you don't see the killer at all, just like their feet and arms and stuff. And then Anne falls, and the killer's in front of her, and the killer pulls out a knife, and then Anne kind of like backs against the tree, and she's like, no, 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 no. And then this happens, and the killer just goes, slice. I know it's kind of gross, but slices her throat, and you can see like the wound just gapes open and like blood pours out. It was a really, 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 really well done effect. Yeah, really impressive, and I guess it's good time to mention that the special, well, the gore effects at least were done by Tom Savini, like the makeup and stuff, the gore makeup, and he's kind of like one of the masters of gore, so I guess that explains why it's so well done. And that was probably one of the most, maybe top 2 gruesome and best kills in the movie in terms of like realism. So rest in peace, Annie. Got her first victim. Well, not really. There was 2 murders in the beginning, but that was a flashback. I told you not to get too attached to her. It's funny because when I first saw the movie, I thought that Annie was going to be the main character because she was so chipper and friendly and stuff like that. Okay. Now we have a couple of cringy scenes that I'll just briefly go over. So there's a scene here where all the counselors are just chilling at the dock near the water, just getting some sun or whatever, just talking and stuff. And then Ned, the Joker, starts to drown in the water, apparently. So then Jack Bacon and Brenda rush into the water. They notice that he's drowning and they run and dive into the water to save him. And then Brenda does like a perfect dive into the water. You can tell she has some, swimming training. But Kevin Bacon tries to dive in the water and he just does like the worst belly flop. And you're not supposed to really notice that, but I always notice that. It's kind of funny. Like, it doesn't look like he doesn't know how to dive properly. Neither do I. I would sink like a rock, but so I just drew Kevin Bacon falling straight down into his belly in the water. So anyways, they end up getting Ned out of the water, and then Brenda's gonna give him mouth to mouth, and then Ned just sits up and kisses her like it was all a joke, just because he wanted to kiss her or whatever. It's kind of dumb. But this next scene is super cringy, where I can't remember who it was, but somebody sees a snake in one of the cabins, and they scream, and then all the counselors run in, and then the snake goes under the bed, and then Bill has a machete because he was like cutting down bushes and stuff like that. Actually, no, before that happens, they all look under the bed, and then somehow like they end up just tripping over each other. It was just so awkward, and then Jack Bacon somehow falls on top of the bed and it collapses. It was just so awkward the way they did that. It didn't make any sense to me. It always made me cringe. But so eventually Bill chops the snake in a few pieces with his machete, and for some reason it looks like they used a real snake for the scene. It just seems unnecessary for such a dumb scene. And then another kind of weird scene is this cop shows up and he's there to warn the counselors that crazy old man Ralph, old guy in the beginning, he was seen making his way towards Camp Crystal Lake. And the impression is that Ralph is pretty harmless, but when he gets drunk, he starts preaching and stuff like that, so he could be annoying. So they just said, watch out for Ralph. But what I hated about this scene was the way this cop was acting. It seemed so out of place, like he was acting like a stereotypical cop or detective from like the 40s or something, but in a comedic way. Like, I don't know, it's hard to explain, something that would happen on like SNL or something. I don't know, like a fast talking, no nonsense cop with like very short answers. I don't know, didn't fit in the movie at all. Seemed very, very, very out of place, but whatever. And then he's like, we ain't gonna stand for no weirdness out here. And then he puts his glasses on and drives away. So then, of course, what happens is, who shows up but, well, actually, in one of the cabins now, Alice, she's putting away some pots or something like that, and then she opens the storage closet, and old man Ralph shows up. He was in the closet for some reason, and she screams, and he's like, I'm the messenger of God. You're all doomed, doomed. This place has got a death curse. Stuff like that, same old stuff, and then, a few of the counselors run in, and they're like, get out of here, you crazy old man. So he finally leaves. He goes outside and gets on his bike, and he pedals away, and he's like looking back at them. So, and they're playing like this really creepy music. So that was well done. I liked how they did that. Added, the right amount of creepiness to the movie. So now it's we have this scene where the sun is going down, it's getting dark. Looks like it might start raining, and we have this is Ned. He's walking outside, just whistling, minding his own business. And then eventually, in one of the cabins, he thinks he sees someone in the doorway, like a shadowy figure. And he's like, hello, can I help you? And there's no response. The person, goes inside the cabin. So he decides to go investigate. He walks up here and goes inside. And then we see Marcy and Jack Bacon sitting outside talking, and they see that it's starting to rain. They hear like thunder in the distance, and Marcy says that she was always afraid of the rain since she was a kid. She had a dream where it was raining and then the rain turned to blood, and ever since that she was scared of the rain. And Jack Bacon is just like, yeah, it was just a dream. So it's starting to kind of sound like Nightmare on Elm Street now. So of course the only response, or the only follow-up to that there can possibly be, is to have some adult relations in the cabin. So there's Jack and Marcy in the lower bunk, doing their adult thing. And it's kind of creepy because the camera slowly pans up as they're doing their thing, and they don't find, but we see that Ned is dead in the bed. That rhymes. Ned is dead in the bed. Ned is dead in the bed. Ned is dead in the bed above them. And his throat is slit. There's blood, dripping down. Pretty cool. And he, I think his eyes are open too. That's another good thing. Like, in this movie, when they show dead people, the eyes are usually open, which is, a lot more scary and realistic. A lot of movies, they'll show their eyes closed, which, doesn't really happen that way. So then, they're all done their thing, and then Marcy's like, oh, I gotta go to the washroom. Maybe she had to take a dump or something, I don't know. So she leaves, and Jack Bacon's like, hurry up, I get cold without you. So now, there's Jack Bacon just chilling in bed, smoking a cigarette, as I'm told adults do after such a act. And then he's just chilling, relaxing, and then he feels something drip on his head, which is obviously the blood from Ned in the bed above him. And so I guess this story about Marcy's dream about the raining blood was kind of foreshadowing this. And then, speaking of raining blood, there's a blood tsunami coming up. So suddenly, a hand comes out from under the bed and grabs Kevin Bacon's forehead, or Jack Bacon's forehead. I didn't draw the rips through Kevin slowly, rips through Kevin Bacon's neck, and pierces right through, and then just all blood is like, all blood just spurts everywhere on his face and everything. And it's really, really cool. This is probably the coolest kill in the movie, most memorable, that's for sure, and probably the most well done. But then we cut to this shot. Now I kind of exaggerated this for comedic value, but basically in this shot, only Kevin Bacon's face or his head was real, but his neck and his body weren't real. You can tell like the neck was a completely different color than his face, and it was kind of deformed, like it kind of started bending to the side in an unnatural way. So I just drew it like extremely exaggerated, like a wet noodle. But yeah, there's another shot of the spear and there's blood continuously spurting out, so that was pretty cool. And when I originally saw the movie, I saw like this version that I saw to make this comic was the unrated version, so it had everything, all the gore and stuff like that. But I think the previous version I saw just showed this part, and they cut it like pretty quick too. So in the unrated version, they show it for a lot longer, and they also show this cut too. This, I don't know, shot, I guess. So rest in peace, Jack Bacon. Okay, so now we're in the washroom area. So this is like a shared washroom facility, I guess, where there's multiple stalls or whatever. And there's Marcy in the stall doing her business. And those are her feet. It's really hard to draw feet, but those are supposed to be feet. And she hears someone enter, and you hear, the viewer hears, which sort of becomes the iconic Jason Friday the 13th sound. If I remember, I'll explain what that is later. But yeah, you hear that a lot. But anyways, Marcy hears somebody come in, and she's like, Jack, but nobody responds, so she's like, yeah, whatever. So she finishes her business, she goes to wash her hands, and then she hears something else. So she walks to the shower area where the showers are, and she opens the shower curtain thinking that Jack was behind there, just, messing around with her. But no one's there, so she's like, she turns around, and then she sees an axe, and the axe comes down, and you don't see the axe going in, but in this shot, her body falls back against the wall, and you can see the axe is buried into her head, into her eye area, I guess. There's all blood pouring out, so pretty gruesome shot right there. Another pretty good effect. So another one bites the dust, dropping like flies. So now we are in another cabin here, and there's three counselors, Bill, Alice, and Brenda. And it's kind of weird, but they're playing strip Monopoly, like strip poker, but playing the Monopoly version. And as you can see, Bill has no shirt on. Alice is everything on, but she's about to have to take her top off, and Brenda has no top and no bottom. It's weird because these three counselors were the more responsible of the counselors. It doesn't seem like it would be in their personality, like they weren't drinking, they weren't high or nothing. They were just like, hey, let's play strip Monopoly. Okay. They weren't flirting with each other or nothing like that. It just seems so out of place. And then, yeah, just for fun, I drew the Monopoly billionaire guy with his eyes bulging out, but he wasn't really there, believe me. So suddenly the door blows open from the wind because it was starting to rain pretty hard now. And then Brenda is like, oh my god, I forgot to close the door or the window in my cabin. And she's like, well, we should call it a night anyway. So she leaves. So I guess that's the end of Strip Monopoly. So Brenda goes back to her cabin. She's reading a book. She's settled in. She has her PJs on, her nightgown or whatever. And she then suddenly hears a very faint voice say, help me, help me. Sounds like a kid. It sounds like it's kind of far away. So she goes to investigate. She goes outside in the pouring rain in her nightgown and everything. She has a flashlight and she keeps hearing the voice, help, over here, over here. Sounds like a kid's voice. And then she wanders onto the archery range. And then just then, the lights, big bright lights on the archery range turn on. And she's kind of blinded a bit. She can't see who it is. But then all of a sudden, all we hear is a scream. Loud scream. And so I guess she bit the bullet, bit the dust. And we see the cabin, and there's Alice inside, and she says, I thought I heard a scream. It sounded like Brenda, which is kind of weird. I don't think you can identify who that was by the scream. And this is Bill. He has his rain poncho thingy on because he was checking on the generator. And he's like, I didn't hear anything, but okay, let's go check it out. So they both go to Brenda's cabin to check it out. And they look around and they eventually find a bloody axe on her pillow. Or it was on one of the counselor's pillows. I don't know whose pillow it was, but they find a bloody axe. So I was like, what the heck is going on here? So they try to make a phone call. The phone is dead. They try to use a payphone. That's dead as well. Then they're like, screw this, let's get out of here. So they try to start a pickup truck, but it's not working. So Alice is like, you know what, let's just walk out of here. And Bill's like, oh, we can't, it's too, it's raining too hard. The nearest town is like 10 miles away. We'll make it, so let's just wait here until Steve comes back. I'm sure there's a, rational explanation for all this. So she agrees reluctantly. So they go back to the cabin. So now we cut to Steve Flanders here. So his truck actually, or Jeep or whatever it was, broke down. So he had to get a lift from a cop. But the cop drops him off like near the camp because the cop has to go respond to some car accident or something. So he's walking back to the camp. And then he sees somebody. It's, he sees the killer. And he's like, doesn't know that they're a killer yet. He's like, oh, hi, what are you doing out in this mess? And he starts to walk towards the killer, but then suddenly he gets stabbed in the gut, or it looks like he gets stabbed in the gut. You don't actually see the knife going in, but that's the way it reacts. And that's how the music cue makes it seem. And the music cues are never wrong. So now we have, so the lights in the meantime went out in the lights in the whole camp area go out, so the electricity, whatever. So Ned goes to check on it in the power generator room. So there's the generator. He's got a lantern. He's like, what? He's trying to figure out what happened, why there's no power. So this is kind of interesting or funny, or I don't know what you want to call it. But so in the meantime, Alice is in the kitchen and she decides to make tea or coffee or something. And it's literally a 2-minute scene. I timed it. It's almost exactly 2 minutes. It's one camera angle, one long continuous shot. There's no dialogue, nothing happening. It's just her making coffee. And I always thought that was like so weird. Like, this is an hour into the movie and now they're doing a 2-minute coffee making scene. Like, I guess maybe they were trying to build suspense or something, but it just didn't work. But it seems kind of out of place. But anyway, she's like, oh, what's going on? What's taking Bill so long? It's been a whole 2 minutes. Let me go check on him. So she decides to go to the generator room. And she closes or opens the door for the generator room, and she sees Bill's body stuck to the door. And there's an arrow going through his eyeball. There's an arrow going in his neck. There's an arrow going in his gut. And there was another one like in his crotch area or something. And his throat is slit, and there's blood coming down. And so she screams, ah. And this was another well done effect too. Very creepy looking. I know I say creepy a lot, but I don't know what else to say. Disturbing, I don't know. So, and another thing I thought was weird is why did he get killed by arrows? Shouldn't that have been Brenda? Like Brenda when she was on the archery range. I thought she was gonna see a shadowy figure and think that it was Ned, because Ned was messing around with arrows before. then she was gonna get shot with the arrow. Or it would have been even better if Ned got shot by the arrows. That would have been like, karma or whatever. Kind of harsh karma, but Anyway, so Alice freaks out. She runs back to the cabin and she barricades the door. So she puts a bunch of stuff in front of the door and she ties a rope to the door handle and ties the other end to like a beam on the ceiling or something. Just kind of weird. Like the rope makes sense because the door opens outward, so that would work. But like this barricade wouldn't prevent the door from opening because it opens the other way. But anyway, so she grabs a bat and she's kind of freaking out. She walks into the kitchen area and then she's like closing the drapes for the window, and then suddenly Brenda's body goes flying through the window and lands on the floor. She crashes through the window, lands on the floor. Of course, Alice is freaking out, and I see all bits of glass, and Brenda's body was like, this wasn't done very well, the makeup on Brenda. For some reason I have a feeling that Tom Savini was sick that day or something and someone else did it, but there was just like random blood on her. It looked like random bruising on her face, and then there was like ropes tied around her body, so you don't really know how she died, like what was the cause of death. You can't really tell, and it just doesn't look very good. But nonetheless, and her eyes were closed too. That's I think one of the few deaths where the eyes were closed, and maybe Bill's eye was closed. So yeah, Brenda sees that, she freaks out, and then one interesting thing is, so Alice is wearing a raincoat on this part, and she's sort of backing away from Brenda, and her coat gets stuck on the stove, and she kind of like, in a panic, kind of like just rips the coat off. So I don't know if that was just a fluke, or if that was supposed to happen, but it's kind of interesting. So then she sees that a Jeep pulls up outside, so she runs outside, she removes the barricade, she runs outside, and she's like, help me. So then this lady gets out of the Jeep, very friendly looking lady, and she's like, who are you? And she says, why, I'm Mrs. Voorhees. And she looks overly nice, I don't know, something's off about her. So, Alice is like, they're all dead, everyone's dead. And she's like, calm down, don't worry, you're just upset because of the storm, because of this place. And she's like, I'll go in and check in the cabin. And she's like, no, don't go in there, you'll die, you'll be killed too. And then she's like, I'm not afraid. There's a reason for that. So she goes into the cabin, they both go into the cabin, and Mrs. Voorhees sees Brenda's body on the floor, and she's like, oh, what a shame, she was so young. And she's like, this place, I told Steve Christie not to open this place. And she says, did you know a young boy drowned? His name was Jason. And during this you can hear so she explains that she used to work at the camp a long time ago, and there was a boy named Jason, and he drowned because the counselors weren't paying attention. They were having sex instead. So she hears a voice in her head saying, help me, mommy, help me. So it's Jason saying, help me, mommy, help me. And she says, I am Jason, I am. And she says, you see, Jason was my son, and today is his birthday. Wow, so Jason's birthday was on Friday the 13th. So then she basically says, she starts getting like more and more deranged looking, and she says, you let him drown, you never paid attention, look what you did to him, look what you did to him. So she starts like really freaking out, she pulls out her knife, and her face just looks demonic. So of course Alice is freaking out. Alice never did anything to no kid named Jason. What you talking about? So sees Annie's dead body with her slit throat in the passenger seat. She freaks out, she starts running, and then suddenly she sees Steve Flanders' body just kind of flop down. I guess he was up in a tree or something, tied up in a tree. And you see like a knife sticking out of his chest with all like blood coming down. And then she screams again and keeps running. So all the screaming wakes up Mrs. Voorhees, and she goes outside and sees Alice running. And then she says in a kid's voice, "Kill her, mommy. Don't let her live." So I guess that was supposed to be Jason's voice talking through her, or like was that his spirit talking through her, or was she just crazy and she's just talking that way, on purpose or whatever. Don't really know. Either way, it's creepy. So then Alice goes into this cabin. She grabs a gun, like a rifle, but there's no ammo. And then Mrs. Voorhees follows her in. And then Mrs. Voorhees just lays the smack down on her, just starts slapping her around like crazy. And then she throws her into this table, and she goes crashing right through the table. And I just drew this part for fun. There's the ECW announcers, commentators, and then the ECW audience. And they're saying ECW, 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 ECW. And the commentators are saying, "Oh my god, cat fight, cat fight." Basically, yeah, ECW was an old wrestling promotion. And every time somebody went through a table or something, the crowd would chant ECW, ECW. And every time when I'm watching a movie, if somebody like breaks through the table, I start chanting ECW. So I don't know if that was funny, but never mind. Moving along. So then Alice she gets up, she gets in a few shots on Mrs. Voorhees and manages to escape. So she runs into the storage closet where Old Man Ralph was hiding before, and she closes the door, hoping that Mrs. Voorhees doesn't come in. And so Mrs. Voorhees knows she's in there, so she starts smashing through the door, kind of like The Shining, Jack Nicholson. And then she manages to break in, and gets she has a machete now, and gets a pen and just bongs her on the head, bong, bong, knocks her out. And the noise that Mrs. Voorhees makes when she gets hit is just priceless, priceless. I can't imitate it because it'll probably wake you up if you're asleep, but it's worth watching the movie just for that. And then, so, I guess Alice must have thought she killed her, because she goes outside. She rather calmly just sits right in front of the water there, the lakeshore, and there's a boat there and all that stuff, and she's just like pretty chill. But then she notices at the corner of her eye that Mrs. Voorhees is approaching with a machete. So they end up, like, there's a scuffle, they end up fighting a little bit. Mrs. Voorhees drops the axe, which Alice eventually picks up, and then she starts charging Mrs. Voorhees in slow motion. And then Mrs. Voorhees makes this awesome face, like, oh my god, like she knows she's about to die. And then this happens. She gets decapitated. That's Mrs. Voorhees, obviously, not Alice. Mrs. Voorhees gets decapitated, so there's her bloody stump of a neck, and her head's going flying, and there's all blood spurting out, spurt, 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 spurt. And you see her hands kind of like writhing, maybe the nerves like still twitching or whatever. So it's pretty cool shot, pretty cool death, very satisfying actually. Even though I kind of felt sorry for Mrs. Voorhees, because she must have went crazy after what happened to her son, but still, that was very satisfying to see. And you can also tell that those weren't actually her hands, because it was clearly a man's hands, because there's a lot of like hair on the hands and stuff like that, and the hands were kind of like bulky or whatever. So then Alice finally, realizing it's all over, she goes into that canoe and she pushes herself into the middle, like rows herself into the middle of the lake, and I guess falls asleep. So then it fades to the morning, and she's still there, and there's nice peaceful music playing, and cops show up in the distance there, and then she kind of wakes up and looks up, and she has a very, peaceful looking expression on her face because she knows it's all over her. And then suddenly, the best part of the movie, it's none other than Jason. He jumps up out of the water, he grabs Alice and pulls her under the water, and Jason's body's like all decomposed and stuff like that. Kind of looks like he's burned a little bit, but he's not actually supposed to be burned, just like a lot of bruising or blood pooling or whatever. But yeah, really, really cool, really shocking moment. No one expected that to happen in this movie. So she gets pulled underwater, and then suddenly she wakes up in the hospital. She's like, no. And she sees like there's doctors and cops around her and stuff, and they're like, it's okay, don't worry, you're safe now. And she says, did anybody else make it out of there? And the cop's like, no, sorry. So everyone else was dead. Well, she already knew that, but. And then she says, what about the boy? And the cop's like, what boy? It's like, the boy, Jason. And the cop's like, we didn't see any boy. We just found your body in the water. We thought you were dead too. And then she's like, then he's still there. And then it just fades to a shot of the lake. And again, that peaceful music plays. And that's where you can see like a little ripple or bubble or something like that, which is probably just a fluke, but kind of makes it seem like Jason's under there, making bubbles. So yeah, that's the ending. Now the question is, did this really happen, or did she imagine Jason jumping out of the water? I guess we don't really know as a viewer. This could, maybe it was just her imagination, or maybe it really happened, or was it like a spirit that jumped up and pulled her under, or was it actually like a zombified corpse kind of thing? I guess we don't really know. I'm not sure which explanation I prefer, but I guess I'll go with that. That was actually Jason's kind of like, I guess, zombified-ish body, because Jason is essentially a zombie in a way, except for that he doesn't eat people, he just kills them. So yeah, great ending. A lot of people say that the movie should have ended right here and not have the hospital scene, which I kind of agree. But regardless, that's still one of the best shock endings of all time. So for horror movies, I guess, or for any movie. So that's basically that. My opinions on this movie is that I think it's good. It does drag on a lot. There's a lot of slow, pointless parts of the movie. A lot of stalking that just takes forever. But that's kind of what these Jason movies are all about. But it really picks up during the last, 20, 25 minutes once Mrs. Voorhees gets introduced. That's when the movie gets really interesting. And of course, with this shock ending, it's just awesome. Like, if I were to compare the movie to A Nightmare on Elm Street, the first one, I would say Nightmare wins over this overall. But I think because of the ending of this movie definitely is way better than the ending of Nightmare on Elm Street. So I guess it wins in that sense. The kills were cool, and there's the blood and the gore effects were very well done. So it by today's standards, if you're not into these older movies, you might find it a little bit boring. But if you want to see how the Jason saga begins, yeah, I guess this is the best and only way to do it. So, and like I was mentioning before, the whole thing. Well, apparently, from what I understand, that was supposed to be Mrs. Voorhees saying Jason, like J, son, and then just put those effects on it or whatever. So maybe that was supposed to be like playing in her head, and in the later movies, I guess that's repeating in Jason's head because you hear it. The rest of the movies as well. So I don't know if that's true. Anywho, that wraps it up for this movie. I hope you enjoyed it, and until next time, take care.